what is the best means of passive income and how quickly can you get there? And a lot of this is stemming from this Diary of a CEO podcast, the episode with Nischa, who I believe is like one of the best financial YouTubers on the actual platform. And I think that the coolest stuff around what Nischa has to say is how real it is to normal people out there that think about things like, hey, what's passive income? And she describes passive income as doing things or earning money with minimal amounts of work. And in all reality, a lot of things like creating content or selling products or whatever, they're not actually passive income. They're considered side hustles. And you're going to have a large opportunity cost on the front end. And it's going to take a very long period of time to see that net gain, that positive gain on the back end. It's going to take a much longer time than people recognize. But she's sharing her story about why and how long it took her to get out of the financial sector and for her to get everything sort of in line and rolling forward based off of what she wanted to do as a person and as an influencer, really, and how to share her story with those out there. And I really can relate to this. And the one thing she says before we get into the stuff around passive income and the fastest thing that she shares, which ironically, we just put out a video about this and it is absolutely 100% rings true, is that she talks through, this is like the best part of this podcast. And I actually was listening to the podcast like, man, I could make 3 or 4 videos off of this, just like I did the Kevin O'Leary one. But she starts talking through the lens of, look, what's your validation? And she even has books that she's referencing and stuff like that. But she's going, what is your internal validation? And for her, there was a point where she would buy designer clothes and stuff like that. And she realized she had a lot of pain, a lot of problems, a lot of struggles in her job that she didn't like. And she would do these other things and she'd have these carrots dangled in front of her. And that in turn led her to make financial decisions that weren't good and to also sort of kick the can down the road in her life, because she never actually had those hard conversations of what is validation. And this goes back to when I'm talking about the financial I's, dotting the financial I's, crossing the financial T's, and I'm mentioning things like, what's your internal passion? What's your internal purpose? It rings true with this validation concept. And it actually brings up, she talks about the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And what's interesting here is that I have friends who've read that book and then they still at the same time will put money down to go purchase some $150,000 car, knowing that the asset, even at that expense level, is not going to come back and help them. And Nischa talks about this in the podcast. So when she's saying things like, what's your validation? That in turn leads you to have better conversations about finances with yourself, and then also goes into different conversations that you can have with your spouse and if you're or your partner. And you can have these financial conversations based off of like, look, if I had $100,000, like, this is what I would want to do with $100,000. What do you want to do with $100,000? Okay, well, this is what you want to do. All right, well, let's work together. And even to the point where let's have a team account, a joint partner account, and then let's have the me account, and then let's have the you account, so that we can each sort of do our own thing, but then also have that partner account so that we can grow over time. And where this leads into, as far as setting up these really, really great concepts that anybody can apply, she starts to talk about the passive income myth, right? And the whole discussion of like, what's the best or fastest way to earn passive income? And a lot of people will go through and, they talk about side hustles. And the very first thing around passive income that she brings up is a high yield savings account. Okay. So literally taking money and putting it into a high yield savings account. And so you could sit here and say, all right, I've got my monthly fund, and the monthly fund is where you're going to be taking care of your bills and taking care of all the necessities, your groceries, things along those lines. You've got this monthly fund that you have to make sure is fully funded. But what's interesting is that when you get your finances in line, to the sense of what I always say is, you've got your monthly fund, right, that you can take care of, and then you should have 6 to 9 months of expenses covered in your emergency fund, and that emergency fund would actually live in a high yield savings account. Okay. And so if you can take that and say, I'm going to build out 6 to 9 months in a high yield savings account, and I'm going to try to do these things. On top of this, one way that you can increase your passive income is go to your boss and ask for more money. Switch jobs, switch companies, go to another company to try to get a higher pay grade at another company, and then try to lead to the point where you have higher income than expensive. That's really outside of the high yield savings. That's like the second fastest way to increase your passive income is to just ask for a freaking pay raise. Just ask, try to find another job. And so the interesting part there is that if you have your monthly account set up, and this is sort of stemming from the conversation with Nischa, not through me, but through Bartlett on Diary of a CEO, and you actually can set up a high yield savings that gets 4% returns, what ends up occurring is oftentimes the high yield savings can actually fuel your monthly account. And so now that if your budgeting is in line and you've got your validation observed and you can deal with any type of trauma or problem around validation, and you try to resolve some of those internal validations, now all of a sudden the high yield savings can take care of that monthly account, and now you're earning even more than you're spending. And that's the ultimate key here to try to get to that financial freedom. Now, the last part here of a truly passive income, truly passive income, is that echoing what she goes over is, looking at your high yield savings. You can ask your boss for more money. You can get another job somewhere else, and that typically will lead to like a 20% pay increase. The most probably highest return is simple investing in some type of ETF. So you take something like VOO, you download, Vanguard, you get on Charles Schwab, and you say, okay, I'm going to get VOO, I'm going to get VOO, and every single month I'm going to put in, $500 or whatever that might be, and I'm going to get this return, and I'm just going to play the long game. I'm playing the 20, 30-year game, and I'm going to every single month put in 300, 500, whatever the dollar amount is, but it's part of your expense. And now all of a sudden that's passive income that you're really not working towards. It's just you're working on the front end, then you're implementing that into your strategy. And now all of a sudden your validation and your understanding of your financial battles comes back to reality, and it comes back to like just playing the game for a numbers game of what it is, and less so about the emotional baggage and the crap around it that we typically want to avoid. We want to avoid these conversations with ourselves. What is the validation? Why do I want to have, whatever it might be as a person? Why do I want to buy a nice car? Why do I want to get a boat or a jet ski? It's going to be a waste of money. But when you have the conversation of validation now, and then you have that conversation of validation with your partner, now you start to understand why you're doing certain things, and you can actually resolve them by discussing this. And then you start to make those financial decisions based off of logic, like, hey, if we have debt that's 8% or lower, we don't need to pay it off. If it's 8% or higher, pay it off, and then put that money into that long-term investment brain and say, I'm going to put this into VOO or whatever that might, whatever other ETF that you want to choose, and play that 20 to 30 year game. And that's the best way to have that passive income. So recapping this is like the best part about this podcast is her talking about the validation discussion, but then going into 1, ask for a pay raise. 2, try to find another job if you want to keep making money. 3, a high yield savings account is probably like the easiest way to make that passive income, and then transfer that passive income into your monthly bills. And then 4, go invest in VOO. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And you can start to chip away at those financial goals. I hope this helps somebody out there. Peace.